was an incredibly underwhelming season for Paul George, with the rest of the Sixers roster underwhelming right alongside him. As this team begins to turn a page and shift their focus towards next year, last year's prize free agent edition had some interesting thoughts on what needs to be the priority for the team this offseason. And it may not be a player, it is a thought process for what needs to change for this year. Do you want to dive into exactly what his thoughts are and talk a little bit more about the uncomfortable truth that the best direction for this Sixers team is unfortunately continuing to pray to those NBA draft lottery gods and just running it back to see if we get a little larger sample with each of these guys. Now, I want to start off with exactly what Paul George said, and do want to start off with this headline that did catch my eye here. This coming from Yardbarker that reads, Paul George pushing 76ers teammates for one important thing. And dive into the exact quote for what he said here, that George shared the importance of him, Maxey, and Embiid seeing each other during the offseason. Quote, I think it's very important, George said via Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer. We've already talked about seeing each other, where we're going to be this summer, so we've already had those conversations about connecting once the season's over. I think it's very important. I don't think it's healthy to go 2-3 months before seeing each other, regardless of if we're checking in over the phone. It's just different seeing each other. It's going to be important for the 76ers to build chemistry as they were barely on the court together, especially their star players. And this really is one of the first things that I've heard from Paul George that I wholeheartedly agree with here. There is no doubt that there was not an opportunity to build up the proper chemistry last year. They played 18 total games together, and mind you, in those 18 games, that includes games in which Paul George left, Joel Embiid left, Tyrese Maxey being banged up, that it was not a clear. And I also want to make obvious here, they didn't look great in those 18 games either. This was not a situation sort of like the Brooklyn Nets when you think about that big three, that when they're on the court, they're dominant. They just weren't on the court enough. Not the case with the Sixers team. There are some growing pains that they need to work through. So I do love that Paul George seems to at least being proactive. I personally would much rather see some pictures working out in a gym already. And what I'm really hoping is happening right now is each of these guys are flipping on the NBA playoffs in the same way that I am, thinking they need to get back here, that there should be a hunger watching these games, watching the Orlando Magic or, the Cleveland Cavaliers be the top seed in the Eastern Conference. This should be lighting a fire under the Sixers team of we can do that too. That is how they should be approaching this, and they got to speak with their actions moving forward. Now, I mentioned Paul George here. I was even more impressed with a little bit of the maturity and the outlook from Tyrese Maxey. And I want to give out two quotes that he specifically said on the same topic here. And he said, quote, it's extremely important, man, Maxey said. I said it at the beginning of the year, like at Media Day. I said, listen, right now, we're just names on a paper, and that's a fact. I mean, we got to see how it gets put together, how it doesn't get put together, who works with who doesn't work with who. And I mean, we never did. I don't think we ever really figured it out. We never really figured it out. The Sixers never figured it out, mainly because of the injuries. Coach Nick Nurse was never given a real chance to see what this group can do together. The stars need to be healthy and ready to go in training camp, which wasn't the case for this season, as Embiid was unable to participate in camp, and then it stumbled into the regular season and all of the struggles. Quote, I think hopefully everybody can get healthy. Everybody's going to be ready for the start of training camp next year, Maxey continued. Before that, whenever the case may be, get guys together in the summertime, spend time with each other, and try to hit the ground running and get a good start to next year. That's the thing that we can try and plan on and try to use his goals moving forward. Now, the hardest part about this workout conversation, we know Tyrese Maxey is a gym rat. We know that he is going to be adding layers to his game as he does year in and year out, a guy that you do not have to worry about in the regard. He has that hunger in his gut. He has that will to continue to get better in a way that is incredibly admirable and that you hope for in your all-star talents. Paul George, a guy that I think will be involved in that, particularly with him leading with these quotes. And whether this is for image sake, whether this is whatever the motivation may be, maybe this is to give him benefit of the doubt here, that it does truly eat at him how bad this season went. And in fairness, I think this was below even the worst of expectations. I do think we need to put that on the table, that if you would line me up and said the absolute nightmare situation, that if Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid never play together, what is the Sixers record? I still probably would have guessed better than the fifth worst record in the league based on the expectations coming to the year. But nonetheless, the results are the results. The difficult part about this workout conversation, it circles back to Joel Embiid. And unfortunately, this entire conversation circles back to Joel Embiid, and that is the hardest part of the question to answer at this point in time. Is there a world where Joel Embiid steps back on the floor next year and looks like the Joel Embiid that we have come to know? That a guy has been an MVP, been a multi-time All-Star, 9-time All-Star, been the face of the franchise for so many years? Maybe. But there's also a world where that does not happen. And when speaking about these workouts with these chemistry, we already know that Joel Embiid has been under the knife this offseason. We already know that he's gotten surgery on that problematic knee that has been bothering him for quite some time now. Does that fix things? We sure hope so, but it also probably is not the best idea, plan, or expectation for him to be going through open runs in a gym in the dead heat of summer. That's kind of the part that I've always had a little bit of sympathy and defense for Joel, is for all this go work out, go get in shape stuff. It's probably the best outlook for him to kind of stay off things and make sure he's not only preserving the knee, but doing whatever's necessary from a health perspective here. In this current case, that means recover from surgery. Now, granted, that doesn't excuse some of the fitness things that we've seen, some of the lack of preparedness that we've seen from Joel. There's certainly critiques that are fair there, but it's going to have to be under doctor supervision that this guy is even working out in the near future. Now, the fact that he does have the surgery done already does give me a little bit of hope that you can sort of build some momentum coming into the season, that I don't want this guy just sitting on his butt for several months before the next season tips off. He obviously has to be in the gym, be working, and building some chemistry there, but I do think it is important to note a little bit of different standard, that if I'm seeing Tyrese Maxey, the Rico Hines runs feel a little different than if Joel Embiid is in the building for those specifically. Now, Maxey had another quote that I did want to pull up as well here, and I like this one as well. He said, and he kind of reinforced this point, and he said, the name's on the paper, it looks nice, it does. And I think we've seen where our peaks can be this year. There wasn't a lot of them, but there were some stretches where we all played and we looked really good. We found the right rotations. We knew who to get the ball to. We knew who we need to get the ball to them. Everybody got shots. Everybody looked good. So the sky's the limit. That's the thing I can say. But the work has to be put in from day one, not from the middle of the season. Today is our last game. Whenever everybody decides to work out, that's when our season begins for the next year, individually and collectively. And it has to be taken serious. And I think we will take it serious. And I have the ultimate faith in the organization and the guys up top and my teammates to do that. I do think some of this might be a little bit of lip service and saying the right thing here, but nonetheless, I love that Maxey is saying it. And I do think we're beginning to see, and again, I'm going to continue to reflect on the NBA draft lottery as such a significant reflection point in the overall Sixers franchise, that will be a monumental day one way or another, that we're having a pretty daunting reality if they don't retain that draft pick. And if there is a world where we're talking about bringing Cooper Flagg into this mix, the outlook changes drastically here. Hopefully a kick in the butt for the organization, everybody get fired up, and you're back in that contending conversation. And don't get me wrong, a win, to be clear, a win in the NBA draft lottery should simply be viewed as keeping the draft pick. Having a chance to add a young talent, a top 6 talent to this roster that already has Jared McCain, already has Tyrese Maxey, you have something of a foundation of the next era. But I do wonder if we're starting to see that pushed a little more prevalently. And again, it circles back to the questions that we don't have answers from a health status of Joel Embiid here. But I do wonder if Tyrese Maxey begins to get pushed as this face of the franchise. We've sort of already seen it last year, certainly the case. Think about the Maxey Museum that occurred and everything in that past offseason that did go down. But I do wonder if that continues to be magnified and pushed further here. Now, as far as a couple other loose ends with the Sixers organization, it is the dead of summer. There's not a whole lot going on, but I did want to mention a couple moving parts behind the scenes. For starters, we do know that 76ers general manager amongst the candidates for the Hawks vacancy, that being Elton Brand here. And yes, while we do talk about Daryl Morey quite often, the official general manager of the Sixers is still Elton Brand. Now, Elton's a guy who's been here for quite a bit of time here. He obviously was a player for the Sixers, a very good NBA player, by the way. If you ever do a little basketball reference search, you will be impressed with some of the numbers that man spit out there. But he is viewed in very high regard by not only the Sixers individually, but seemingly on a league-wide basis here. It's always been something that sort of surprised me, that if you listen to some national podcasts, if you just talk to some personnel of the team, other media members here, Elton Brand is almost universally spoken in high regard here. And with this current situation with the Sixers, even with him being a general manager, it's Daryl Morey calling the shots. We all know that, and that's been clear since he brought here. Now, there's collaborative efforts. I'm sure they have conversations, and Daryl will be the first guy to praise Elton Brand there. But it wouldn't shock me if he does ultimately, leave this summer and take an opportunity. And frankly, good for Elton, man. That I think he has a worse rep than he probably deserves from an organizational standpoint, and it would be kind of cool to see him spread his wings and get his chance to put his full imprints on a franchise. And the Hawks, not the worst gig that you could get when thinking about the general managers that tend to get fired. You do walk into a spot that has Jalen Johnson, has Trae Young, has last year's number 1 overall pick in Zachary Risacher there. There could be worse spots to land if he does get in that mix. Now, one more shout out that I did want to provide how could I forget about Michael Carter-Williams, one of the biggest pillars of the process here? But it is not basketball I'm talking about, as former 76ers guard is set to make amateur boxing debut. Yep, that is what Michael Carter-Williams is doing these days. I cannot believe that this man has played himself out of the league already. He did stick around for a little bit in the NBA, played for the Bulls, played for the Bucks, and never really found his stride as a rotational or bench piece there. I really thought this man was going to be the real deal. I will never forget the quadruple double that he had in his NBA debut there. He looked incredible. I'm pretty sure it was against the Miami Heat. I was bought in of like this being the guard of the future. It certainly was one of those first true moments of the process there. But shout out to MCW, man. Might have to check that out when that's happening. If that's happening in Philly, I might have to go see that man box, because do have a little bit of soft spot in my heart for him, but hopefully he's enjoying the ride there. But ultimately, do want to hear from you guys in the comments about the larger conversation here. Do you believe what is being said by Paul George? What is your level of optimism that this even goes down? And is it just time to slam the window shut on winning around Joel Embiid, or do you still have a little bit of hope? Drop those thoughts below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Appreciate each and every one of you guys that have and continue to hang with me through the tough part of this season, in the offseason here. Hit that like on this video if you have not already. I'll be back to talk to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.